In 18th century Europe, the richer your dinnerware, the greater your risk of death, because biting into a tomato at an aristocrat's table could kill, while peasants feasted unharmed. For nearly 200 years, the wealthy blamed tomatoes, branding them deadly poison apples. But if the fruit itself was not changing, what was condemning the rich and sparing the poor? The truth upends everything you think you know about food, class, and invisible dangers. Candlelight flickered across polished silver and pewter, illuminating the faces of Europe's elite as they gathered for another lavish evening meal. A footman swept into the room, announcing the next course, a tomato dish rare and fashionable among those eager to show off their worldliness. The air buzzed with conversation, but soon a hush fell. A guest, pale and sweating, clutched at his abdomen. Another pressed a hand to her forehead, struggling to focus as the room spun. The physician, summoned from the corner, muttered about bilious colic and disturbances of the humors, his remedies as uncertain as his diagnoses. In the days that followed, the household diary recorded a string of complaints, including violent stomach pain, trembling hands, and sudden confusion, striking only those who had dined at the table. Rumors spread through the salons that the New World fruit was cursed, a poison apple that struck down the refined while sparing the common. Yet outside these grand estates, peasants ate tomatoes from wooden bowls and felt nothing but satisfaction. Physicians puzzled over the contrast, their casebooks filling with descriptions of mysterious afflictions among the upper class. The pattern repeated for decades. The richer the table, the greater the risk. Behind the heavy drapes and gilded walls, no one suspected that the true danger lay not in the tomato itself, but in the very trappings of privilege. Each dinner party became a silent experiment, the results written in pain, confusion, and the slow unraveling of minds and bodies. Long before chemistry solved the riddle, suspicion took root in the pages of scientific texts. In 1753, Carl Linnaeus published his landmark Species Plantarum, formally placing the tomato in the Solanaceae family, the nightshades. The tomato, now labeled Solanum lycopersicum, found itself in infamous company, deadly belladonna, henbane, and mandrake. These plants were notorious for their toxic alkaloids, and the association cast a long shadow. Pamphlets and herbal guides warned that the tomato's resemblance to its poisonous relatives was no coincidence. The fruit's glossy skin and bright color only deepened the mistrust, earning it the nickname poison apple in English and German broadsheets. The real chemistry of the tomato offered little comfort. While the fruit itself is harmless, the leaves and stems do contain tomatine, a bitter compound with mild toxicity. Botanists of the era, lacking modern analysis, blurred these distinctions. To many, the entire plant was suspect. The potato, another nightshade, faced the same prejudice. Both vegetables were shunned in Northern Europe, their reputation tainted by guilt through botanical association rather than evidence. Even as Italian cooks transformed tomatoes into sauces and stews, Northern physicians cataloged mysterious illnesses and pointed to the fruit's sinister family tree. The fear was not just culinary, it was scientific. Linnaeus's classification meant to bring order, instead cemented suspicion. Instead of asking what else might be at fault, the elite and their doctors found their culprit in the tomato's ancestry. The myth of the poison apple grew, not from what was on the plate, but from what was written in the books. A slab of 18th century pewter, cool and gray, rests beneath the lens of an X-ray fluorescence scanner. The readout glows, tin dominates, but lead registers at 15, sometimes 20%, enough to matter. A materials scientist traces a finger along the rim, explaining that even fine tableware from London or Paris rarely escaped the addition of lead. Cheaper wares, especially large serving dishes or black pewter, could climb above 30%. The more ornate the household, the more pewter crowded the sideboards and tables, each piece a potential reservoir of hidden danger. A beaker of tomato juice, pH measured at 4.4, is poured onto a polished pewter disc. Over several hours, the acid works quietly, dissolving microscopic flecks of lead into solution. In a controlled lab test, the liquid is drawn off and analyzed. The result is up to 100 micrograms of soluble lead per serving, well above modern safety thresholds. The chemistry is simple. Hydrogen ions from citric and malic acids break bonds in the alloy, freeing lead ions that drift invisibly into the food. The same reaction occurs with vinegar, wine, or lemon. But tomatoes, with their bright acidity, are especially efficient solvents. Once ingested, lead acetate is rapidly absorbed in the gut. It travels through the bloodstream, crossing into organs in the brain. The clinical pattern, abdominal pain, tremor, confusion, matches descriptions found in 18th century medical treatises. What physicians called bilious colic or disturbed humors is now recognized as classic poison. The poison was not in the fruit, but in the vessel. Each meal became an experiment in chemistry, with the table itself as the silent accomplice. In the streets of Naples, tomato vendors called out to passers-by, their baskets overflowing with glossy red fruit. By the late 1600s, tomatoes had already found a place in southern Italian kitchens, transforming from botanical curiosity to staple ingredient. Antonio Latini, a steward in a noble household, wrote down the first known tomato sauce recipes in his cookbook, Lo Scalco alla Moderna, published in 1692. Latini's instructions called for ripe tomatoes, herbs, and olive oil. Simple, vibrant, and unmistakably southern Italian. Local cooks in town and countryside simmered tomatoes for hours in wide-mouthed terracotta pots or ladled them into wooden bowls. These humble materials, free of lead, allowed the fruit's flavor to shine and kept the diners safe. Naples archives tell the story in numbers and ledgers. Tomato sales flourished in the city markets, and commercial tomato paste production began by the early 1700s. Yet, across generations, parish records and physicians' notes in southern Italy make no mention of mass illness or unexplained deaths after tomato feasts. Instead, the fruit became a symbol of peasant abundance. Food historians today can still follow Latini's recipes, recreating them in the kitchens of Naples, using the same earthenware and wooden spoons. The result is always the same: a meal that nourishes, not harms. In Italy, the evidence is plain. Where the plate lacked lead, the tomato posed no danger. The so-called poison apple was, in truth, a gift to those who trusted their own traditions over imported fears. On a September morning in 1820, a crowd of nearly 2,000 gathered before the courthouse in Salem, New Jersey. All eyes fixed on Colonel Robert Gibbon Johnson, a respected local figure, as he strode up the steps carrying a basket brimming with ripe tomatoes. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some bets had been placed, and a local physician stood ready to witness the supposed disaster. Johnson selected a tomato, raised it high, and took a deliberate bite. He ate another, then another, until the basket was empty. The silence was thick with anticipation. Minutes passed, no convulsions, no collapse, not even a hint of discomfort. Johnson simply wiped his hands and nodded to the stunned onlookers. The physician who had predicted a public death could only watch as the crowd erupted in disbelief. By that evening, word had spread. The poison apple had failed to claim its victim. By the mid-1800s, chemists finally put the pieces together. Laboratory tests showed that acidic foods, tomatoes, vinegar, even wine, drew lead from pewter and pipes into every bite and sip. Lead poisoning, once a vague collection of symptoms, gained a name and a medical profile. The mechanism was clear: acid met lead, and a hidden toxin entered the body. Today, the same chemistry haunts millions of homes. In Flint, Michigan, between 2014 and 2019, over 100,000 residents drank water laced with lead after a change in water treatment. As of 2024, the EPA estimates 6 to 10 million American homes still have lead service lines. When acid touches old pipes, the risk remains unchanged. Lead slips silently into daily life, just as it did centuries ago. Lead still threatens millions today, from aging pipes to overlooked materials. Privilege can hide risk, while science reveals truth, if we choose to listen. The real danger is not always on our plate, but in what we ignore. Sometimes, what protects us is not wealth, but what we question.